My guest on the podcast today is Eli Packouz. Eli is an inventor and a founder. We're going to find out all the things he's been up to in terms of inventions and what he's founded. And we're going to specifically talk about an invention today that everybody, I would assert that everybody could use it. Everybody can use it. I know we're going to get into this. So Eli, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So where are you recording this from today?
Right now, I'm in Miami, at least for the next 2 weeks, and then I'm off to Mexico.
Yeah, you're telling me you're going to be in Mexico for 4 months to oversee manufacturing and hopefully get some sun. And you're going to be there the nice, coolest part of the year, May through August.
I'm from Miami, so I'm used to it. Yeah.
You're good. That's awesome, Eli. All right, so let's get into our topics for today. So first things first, just to kick us off and get to know you a little bit, what's something that you nerd out about?
Everything.
Perfect. Everything.
Yeah. I'm a huge nerd. So I very much get like obsessed about pretty much any topic. Like, I don't know, I was like at dinner and someone's like, where's the fork come from? And it's like, I don't know, but I've got to know. And so started reading everything there. Apparently I was introduced to Western Europe in the Carolingian dynasty from a Byzantine princess. But before then it gets murkier. But I would say something that's really been captivating my attention lately has been archaeology. I don't know why, but like something about trying to understand how humans have lived in the past. Maybe it has some sort of bearing on the present and the future. But that has been something that I've been quite obsessed with recently, especially since 95% of human history has been pre-agriculture. So that's just like really fascinating to me, and trying to understand as much as we can from the very little bits of information that we have of how people lived back then for so long. And not just like how people live might even be the wrong question, because they could live in so many different ways and so many different configurations. So one thing, because there's so much we can hone in on, the one thing that would be relevant to where this conversation is going to go is completely coincidentally, I was reading some archaeology stuff, and I found the oldest evidence we have for humans flossing. And I guess humans, I'm not using this in terms of Homo sapiens, but in terms of what we would consider human, is 1.8 million years old.
Wow.
Right. It's older than Homo sapiens. This is like, we're talking about some pretty ancient hominids here. And we know they were flossing because there's particular grooves left on their teeth that can only be caused by certain types of abrasions, and they were using plant fibers. So there's a lot of arguments in terms of what has made us human. Is it fire? Is it cooking? Is it, large groups, et cetera, et cetera? I'm going to argue, I'm just going to put it out there, flossing.
This is it. You heard it here first. Eli, when you get your TED Talk and you get on bigger and bigger podcasts, you're like, this is your platform. We're here today because of flossing.
Your parents told you floss after every meal, and there's a reason.
There's a reason why. Well, it's interesting, and I know we're going to talk more about flossing and some of the things you're doing in that space, but it is interesting that, how things have always been getting stuck in teeth. I would imagine that's not a new thing. And if you, like you said, pre-agriculture, but if you're eating a plant, that's the thing that's most likely to get stuck in your teeth. Or you're eating meat, you get stuck in your teeth. Most likely a thing. And as all of us, I'm sure everybody listening has had things stuck in their teeth. That doesn't feel good ever. So you're like, what can I do to take this thing? And then like, it's safer than poking yourself with a stick 1.8 million years ago. You're like, hey, maybe this thing could work.
Exactly. Not only is it not feel good, but it's actually pretty detrimental to your health, not just to your teeth, but also to the inflammation in your gums, which has downstream effects to your veins and your heart health. Not flossing is correlated with many inflammatory diseases, from like arthritis all the way down to erectile dysfunction. So floss. We've been doing it for 1.8 million years.
I'm picturing now, and if you use this in a commercial, you'll have to pay me some sort of nice royalty on this, but the beginning of this Kubrick film where it's the apes and they create fire, and then they kill each other, and the one kills another one. It's like, this is the beginning of humanity. You're like, instead they're like sitting around and they're like, oh look, I got that piece of meat out of my teeth.
That is just as valid of a perspective.
That's just as valid a perspective. Nice, Eli. Let's see. What do I want to ask you? Let's talk about your comfort zone. And so let's first talk about something, or let us know about something that is inside of your comfort zone. And you know that is something that other people are either uncomfortable with, or they just won't do it because it's not something that they're comfortable with. So what's something that's easier inside your comfort zone?
So, I mean, there's like two things that come to mind, like one like physical and one just like behavioral. And I don't want to say this is not in other people's comfort zones, because in these sort of things, I know of many people who are far more comfortable than me, right? So when I say that it's inside my comfort zone, outside of others, I just mean that, like, if you were to draw the bell curve, perhaps the middle of the bell curve, it would be outside of their comfort zone. I'm not all the way at the end, but I am perhaps a standard deviation from the norm. So I really like backcountry camping, wilderness survival. I like spending as much time as I can. I mean, perhaps because I'm an inventor and I spend all my time with technology, it is just really both relaxing, like mentally rejuvenating, and perhaps even like sparking of creativity to get rid of all technology. Because when you're out there and you've got absolutely nothing and you're like, man, it is like so annoying to not have shelter or to be uncomfortable or, what have you. I need a floss. Then when you get rid of everything, that's perhaps when your best ideas come to you. I mean, inventions are when you create a tool to solve a problem. And if you have no problems, if you're so comfortable, you're never going to invent anything. And so I know this does not sound relaxing to so many people, but when you go backcountry camping, you have a lot of problems that tools can solve.
Yeah. I'm sure there are people listening that go, well, I'm actually going to relate this back to my life. My wife has a great saying. She go, why would I go camping when I have a perfectly good bed? Mm-hmm. I'm more with you. I like being out there and doing those things, but she has a point. Why would I make myself uncomfortable or create problems?
So that is a fantastic point to bring up, that, we do have a bed and we do have so much more comfort. But the thing is that the most beautiful things in the world tend to be outside of our homes. And I believe that beauty is worth suffering for. So if it wasn't worth it, I would say no. Like, if you're going to get rid of your bed and still sleep in your bedroom, like, that is a stupid idea. You're going to see the same four walls. But if you're going to be out there in, say the Rocky Mountains, and you're going to see some vast slopes that you've never seen before, are you going to miss your bed? Yeah. Like, honestly, one of the things that I keep thinking in my head is, how do we create a comfortable bed that you can fit into a backpack? There's all sorts of people who have really tried a lot of different ways. A lot of them are better than sleeping on the ground, I'll grant that. None of them compare to my mattress at home, even close. Yeah. If there was a way to bring my mattress with me, I would 100% do it. But I'm not doing it to not have the mattress. I'm doing it to experience the beauty that's out there. And I think that's worth it.
Yeah. Let's flip the script on that question and tell us something that you are uncomfortable doing, or it's outside of your comfort zone, and other people that's a hell yeah for them.
I mean, I really dislike jumping to any sort of conclusion. Like, people, I know that's
my God, people love doing that. That's a good one.
People ask me all sorts of time. It's like, oh, take a bet on what do you think? I'll be like, I don't know. There's like a 30% chance of this and a 70% chance of that. They're like, no. But what do you think? I'm like, I told you what I think, And that's great. And I don't know. That gets me into social trouble sometimes, because I'll perhaps think probabilistically, or if we don't have evidence, I'm just going to say we don't have evidence. I'm very comfortable with saying we don't know. Right. And a lot of times people really value conviction. People value certainty. And those are traits that I think that it's not that I lack, but that I'm super adverse to, And so in meetings, what are you sure will lead the company in this direction? I'm like, well, here are the things I think have good chances. Here's all the reasons that could be wrong. And
such a scientist. Well, we haven't fully tested the hypothesis yet. So we need to test. I really like that. And Ellie, I want to say something that really struck me. People love to jump to conclusions.
I mean, The thing is, I think, like, this is just my guess here, right? I'm not going to jump to a conclusion on why people like jump into conclusions, but I'm going to venture one hypothesis, is that we don't have time to do all the research ourselves on any topic, and we substitute certainty to approximate someone actually having done their own research on the topic. So if you see two people and they're pointing at something, let's say a food, and one person's like, I don't know, it might be poisonous, it might not. And another person's like, that is poisonous, do not eat it. You're going to be like, okay, probably this guy. And so that translates to the rest of our lives, sometimes to our benefit, but sometimes to our detriment.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on and talk about speech. I'll give you 5 minutes, and everybody on the planet gets to listen to this podcast, which would be really nice. That is unfortunately not the case here, because I know how many people listen, and it's not 7 billion or 8 billion, or even people that have iPhones and Android devices. It's not all of you. If we would like to get there someday, that would be nice for myself and all my guests. So it's something to shoot for. Everybody here is listening. What would you want to speak to us about, and what would be your call to action at the end of your speech?
Okay, like, this is probably unwise. I come here representing 2 companies that I founded, and, like, in all honesty, I have a vested interest in talking about my products, because I do want people to buy them, and
Sure.
What I'm about to say might make some people less likely to buy it, but, like, I have to be honest that if I had 5 minutes to give a speech to the world, it would honestly be about a policy that I think would help all of us. So I don't know why this is not as talked about or as popular as it is, but it's called a carbon dividend. So if you have something that you want people to do less of, say, emit carbon into the atmosphere, and I'm just going to take that as an assumption that we want people to do less of that.
Yeah.
If you disagree, then obviously this policy is not for you, and this is not the conversation we're about to have. But I'm presuming we agree that we want people to emit less carbon. So one thing that you can do, and this is tried and true throughout economics, is if you tax something, if something is more expensive, people will do less of it. So there have been lots of people who have proposed carbon taxes. Now, the issue and the very legitimate criticism of carbon taxes is that they hurt poor people the most. If your gas prices go up, then that means food prices go up. That means your heating prices go up, et cetera, et cetera. And the less disposable income you have, the more that's going to hurt you. And so a carbon tax is very likely a regressive tax that hurts poor people the most. And so you get people who are either anti-tax or, anti-hurting the poor people. So you get people both on the right and on the left who are critical of a carbon tax because it either hurts poor people or because it's just taxes in general. So the concept is a carbon dividend, which means that we all pay a tax on whatever carbon we emit, but instead of that tax just going straight to the government to do whatever they want with, it goes to a pool that is then divided equally amongst people. So you get the money right back. So if you emit more carbon, you pay more. If you're a guy who I can reduce my carbon footprint by, not driving as much or switching to something more efficient, that means you're actually making money because you're getting more of that carbon back. So this actually flips it. It turns it from a regressive tax to a progressive tax because in terms of per capita, poor people emit less carbon than richer people.
Yeah.
So it will actually be something that will make poor people money rather than cost them the most. So it flips it entirely. Yeah. And to me, it 100% solves both criticisms of the carbon tax, which is one, that it's a tax and the government is going to put a burden on the economy. If you put the money right back, it's not a burden on the economy. And the second criticism, that it hurts poor people the most, this actually helps poor people the most. So we can tackle global warming without the consequences on the economy or the poor. And I just don't know why people aren't screaming from the hilltops that we should do this.
My question for you around this, first I've heard of it.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. But like you said, I don't know why people aren't talking about this more. Is this something that has been proposed? Has there been any sort of movement on this in the legislative system in America thus far? Or anywhere else in the world? Is anybody doing anything about this other than talking about it?
It has certainly been talked about and has certainly been proposed by people, right? By policy advocates. I'm unaware of it being proposed like as a bill in any legislation and in any legislative body. It might have, and I'm just not aware of it. It certainly has not passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, people bring up bills all the time that die just to pander to their base. So it definitely should be a movement.
There you go. So what do you want people to do now that they've heard your speech?
You know what actually works, surprisingly, is writing a letter to your Congress. If you're in the United States, writing a letter to your congressperson. And if you're in a different country, and there's probably other ways you can reach your elected officials. If you have no elected officials, you probably need to work on that first. But let's focus for a second on the United States.
Yeah.
I know people who work in the political system, and letters to your congressperson actually does work because they fear a negative story in their own district. So if you say, I'm in your district and this is super important to me because of X, Y, Z, and especially if you make it like something that ties into their own platform. And regardless of if you're on the left or the right or the middle or wherever, there is something about this that does tie into your representative's platform. They listen to that, especially if they receive a lot of letters. So that is probably the most effective thing you can do in the short run. And the second thing you do is if anybody supports that policy, vote for them.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. We're going to take a brief commercial break. We'll be right back after this. Ellie, we are back. What else do you want us to know about you? I know it's such a narrow question. You're like, oh my God, that's a lot. A lot. I think the answer is a lot, right?
I mean, the thing is, it's like I'm actually not so gung-ho about people knowing that much about like me in particular.
Yeah.
A lot more interested in people knowing about, what it takes to create cool products, because that's what I do passionately.
Let's hear it. So let's see. What's a question I have for you? I'm not an inventor of products. I invent some content, I guess, but I'm not somebody that even has a pull for creating a product. And what we're going to talk about is, this is a product. This is something that you go and you can pull off the shelf and pay and go to the register and buy it. What's the very first thing you ever invented?
That actually came to market, like
just even as a kid. Like, is there ever anything that you did something and you're like, oh, like this little thing, or who cares if it went to market? Not so interested in that. I guess another way to put it is, have you always been an inventor? Because I feel like inventors are like kids. That's just something that a lot of kids do early on in their life.
Right. You know what they say, that necessity is the mothers of invention. And in my case, sometimes mothers necessitate invention.
Mothers. We're going into some family therapy stuff here.
So perhaps like one of the first things, I might have invented was like a secret code or something to, communicate with my siblings around strict rules. Or perhaps like a box with a fake like compartment, like to hide certain things from parents. I mean, that's not, where's the line between just building something creative and inventing? I mean, according to U.S. Patent Office, if it's novel and inventive within the context of the greater patent office. But as a kid, you're not aware with what else exists out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and to be fair, I don't think that's not inventive. Like two people entirely separately filed the patent for the telephone within just hours of each other. The first was Alexander Graham Bell, and the second we don't remember because he was second.
Yep.
So I've always been trying to solve problems in creative means through building. Some have been more or less, feasible than others. Like, I don't know, when I was like 8 or something, I think I was like trying to design schematics for an anti-gravity chamber, because I don't like when I'm sleeping and my shoulder goes numb if I'm sleeping on my side, and I just toss and I turn. But if there's no gravity, then you don't have to deal with any of that. So I had all sorts of schematics. I thought like if you just blow air up, it could work. The other concept I came up with was a magnetic suit that like you wear this thing and then you have these magnets pulling you and you're suspended.
Yeah.
None of this is gonna work. Although if I ever perfect that design, I would be the first, honestly, because hey, maybe you could take it camping, and then boom, you have your bed out in the wilderness without much need for equipment. But the first thing that actually came to market was actually not even my idea. My brother is a musician, and he did not have musicians to play with, and he wanted a drummer because he's a guitarist. And so he bought tabletop drum machines, and those are things you have to use your hand, and they're super cumbersome. And he just wanted something to control hands free and be pretty, versatile with. So he came up with the idea of a drum machine and a guitar pedal. And so we're like, yeah, that's got to exist. Couldn't find it. So we started asking musicians like, hey, do you know of this? And they're like, no, I've never heard of this, but when you find it, let me know because I want one. And that was the response we kept getting from musicians.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and then we're like, well, if everybody wants it and nobody exists, maybe we should just actually build this. And that went from, the sort of, you're just a kid who, is coming up with zany stuff, to no, we're actually going to make something. We're actually going to sell it. We're actually going to start a company. And so we actually did. We built it. We tested it. People loved it. We did a crowdfunding campaign. We broke a record for the most raised for a musical instrument. This was in 2013, I think. And we started our first company, Singular Sound, making music tech equipment. And we actually came out with 6 mainline products, 8 total, that have just each been, various creative leaps for helping musicians find their own singular sound. Then in about 2017, I was getting ready for a meeting with my brother, and we were trying to floss, and we had eaten a bunch of mango, and it was taking forever. And we're like, there's got to be something that can just do this all for you. And within the span of 2 weeks, a bunch of people were like, hey, you make products. Can you make something that just flosses my teeth for me? And I was like, it was the same thing that we had when we were coming out with the drum machine, is that people just being like, oh man, I just wish this existed. I just wish this existed. And I couldn't sleep for a month because I was like, everybody has teeth. Everybody ought to floss. Nobody wants to, but they would if it was automatic and if it was easy and if it was painless. So I started doing all sorts of research into flossing. I bought periodontal textbooks. I started reading the full coursework just to understand, what is flossing? Why do we floss? Is it important? Turns out it is. And started iterating all sorts of prototype designs. Eventually, we settled on using water jets, because water jets, not only are they adjustable, so you can adjust the comfort level, but they do 2 things better than string floss. Number one, they could get deeper underneath the gum lines than string, because water molecules are smaller than string molecules. So you can actually clean further up there. And the second thing is they could clean a full 360 degrees around each tooth, which is something that's very difficult to do with string, because your gums... your gums wrap around the full tooth, and you have bacteria and plaque and all sorts of stuff in places where string cannot reach. And if you shoot water jets, you could actually get the whole thing. So water flossing has existed since the 50s, and there's all sorts of studies showing it's more effective than string on reducing bleeding and reducing gingivitis and removing plaque, etc. However, its fatal flaw is that it takes even longer than string flossing.
Yes, it does.
So you take the number one complaint, and you make it worse. So I was like, what could we do if we took the number one complaint and made it better? So we started coming up with all sorts of prototypes. We came up with a mouth guard, but the mouth guard quickly showed to be a bad direction, because with a mouth guard, 2 things. Number one, you have to make a custom solution for each person. And when you're making a custom mouth guard, it becomes stupid expensive. This is not a mass manufacturable. Scalable. Exactly. And the second thing is we were channeling water to various points in the mouth guard. We were only going to get between the teeth, not 360 degrees around each tooth. So if we used a mouth guard design, then we're going to be sacrificing one of the best things about water flossing, which is that it's a 360 clean. So eventually we realized that the best way to accomplish this, to make it mass manufacturable and to get a full 360 degrees around each tooth, is an H-shaped design. And what this does is the top U wraps around the top teeth, the bottom U wraps around the bottom teeth, and there's jets coming from both sides at 90 degrees, which is the most effective angle for cleaning. And then this, I don't know if most of your people are on video or they're on
We will
audio.
have this in the promo, and we'll put this on the page.
Awesome. I'll just demonstrate real quickly.
Yeah, do a demonstration for us. I'm fascinated by this.
And you're done. 100% coverage.
Is that actually about how long it should take?
I would go a little slower. So obviously, the slower you go, the more like thorough you're going to get. We recommend 10 seconds.
Total for a mouth is
total.
Which is shorter than using floss.
By a magnitude of like 20.
By a lot.
Yeah. So with that, you have 100% coverage. And this has a lot of advantages because 70% of Americans regularly skip flossing. And according to every dentist I meet, the other 30% does it wrong. So this provides 100% coverage at the correct 90-degree angle. So you're not going to skip any areas. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to do it incorrectly. And because it's so easy, the 70% will actually, well, we hope, will actually do it.
Amazing. I'm going to do you have a demonstration video of this somewhere online as well?
Yeah, if you go to Instafloss.com, we have both people using it as well as we have animations showing you how it works, because we can't like actually put a camera in the mouth to show you. But
that I am I'm like most, I'm guilty of not flossing because I find it to be tedious. Mm-hmm. And what you just showed me, I'm the perfect person for this product because I understand the importance. I also don't like flossing and I just forget. I either forget or it's not a habit. So that thing, what you just showed, the Instafloss is like amazing. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the actual demonstration videos for those who are listening on audio that can't see what you just did, Ellie, so they can see how that works. It's super cool. Super cool. Now, what would you like to ask me?
You coach a lot of people, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of mistakes. Everybody talks about what made them succeed. However, I fear that we're going to have a sort of, what's it called, survivorship bias there, a survivorship bias, where let's say 1% of people succeed by pure luck. And they're like, oh, well, this is what I did. Is it necessarily useful to look at that 1%? Maybe. But I think it might be equally, if not more useful, to look at the 99%. What makes people fail?
Well, I think wonderful question. I think it depends how you define fail. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about somebody like yourself, where succeed means I have a product and market that's making me some sort of profit as what I would call as like an initial success first. And I'm going to use you as an example since we're here together.
Sure.
And as an inventor, creating like a hardware, like I'll call it it's a physical hardware product. I go to the store, I pick it up, I scan it through register, and then I bring it home and use it. What I would assert would make that successful would be that, and I'm going to talk about as you first come out with something. People say it works, and it does work, so it doesn't break. So people buy it, and then it doesn't like break once you get it home. Mm-hmm. That it does what it's supposed to do, meaning that when you go to the dentist, they go, hey, it looks like you've been flossing. And that enough people buy it that you have covered your costs and you're making something on it, that you can pay yourself and you generate interest and it becomes something that is known to certain people. I would say that would be an initial success for an inventor. What I would consider a failure would be, number one, it doesn't work. Like that to me would be the ultimate failure of an invention is you invent something that actually doesn't do what it says it can do. And history is littered with those things, especially in the last, I guess, 50 years of this thing will do this and like doesn't. Like think about all the fitness ab machines. Like that doesn't make you get a six pack by having this ab machine. If it doesn't do the thing and people go, well, it doesn't actually do what I say it's going to do, that would be a failure because nobody's going to buy it then. Or a failure, in my opinion, as an inventor would be that you reach the point where you realize you can't make any money on it because the market of what you're spending for it or what people will spend for it, it's more expensive to make than that. So for example, your product is competing against a $2 product in some ways, or a $1 product. Mm-hmm. And for some people, they're never going to want to spend more than $1 or $2 for that. And history is littered with products that work extremely well, but they're too expensive. And people go, well, I'm willing to put up a little more pain for like $20 less or something. So in that case, what I think, if we're relating it to you or, like people that are doing the kind of work you're doing, it's distraction, perfectionism for sure. Like this thing needs to be absolutely perfect and before anybody can try it versus the approach of an MVP. And then I think another thing that mistakes people make is not getting help around the things they don't know how to do. So for example, if you were my client, and I'm not an expert on this at all, but I'd say, hey, I know you're going off to Mexico for 4 months to oversee production. Do you know how to do that? I've never done it before. I have no idea you're overseeing production, but like, what does that mean? Like if you said, hey, Jason, will you go oversee production? I go, I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't know what you'd want me to do. How would I know? So not being willing to invest in either a person or research or a team member that knows their stuff cold that you can rely on to do that. And then poor marketing, the other thing, and not knowing what you're competing against. One of the things that I don't work with inventors, but I have that's not true. I've worked with a lot of founders. They're not generally inventing new products, but they are inventing technology or software that does something a little bit different. And I heard this on a podcast once, so I'm not going to take credit for this, but the idea that as an inventor or a founder, you get so attached to the idea, but the idea actually requires all of us out here. They're like, oh, this is going to change humanity. My question is, does humanity have to change for your product, or are you going to change humanity? And if the product or service or technology requires me to do something completely different than what I'm doing, it's unlikely I'm going to do it. Most of the time, it's more of how does that fit in? So your product, to me, as I'm seeing it, is a great example of, I've seen water picks. I think that's actually a brand name, but I know what a water pick looks like. It looks like a nice water pick. I've flossed before. Could I see myself using that instead of something else? Absolutely. Like I watched you do it. I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. I would use that. But like you see a lot of inventors come out with things and you're like, that looks great, but it requires me to like actually spend more time or do something that's uncomfortable or create some new habit. And humans, we're just not good at that stuff generally, unless our pain is so high. And I don't mean like physical pain, but like the pain that we have is so high. So flossing is a good example. Some people are going to look at your product and they're going to go, that makes so much sense, but I like spending $1 on floss at 7-Eleven. That's not your target market. Then they're not going to care. You're going to look for those people that go, I understand the importance of it. I have whatever the price point is to spend, and I really care about my teeth health. But when you have these mass market products, like everybody can use this. Well, no, but not everybody's going to buy it. So those would be some of the mistakes. And then you end up spending money to market to everybody, which also puts you under, because that's part of your production costs. So those are some of the, in the context of an inventor, what I would see is failures versus success. And then I think the last thing would be the opposite of finding the good people is just having bad people, which I mean, God, I don't know the space you're in very well, but if it's anything like most other spaces out there in the industry, I'm sure there's all sorts of people that will sell you services, consulting, coaching around inventions and patents and all these things. And I'm sure some of them are amazing. I actually had somebody on my podcast a couple of years ago. It was great. And he does this for a living. He's written books. He's an inventor himself, but I'll bet you there's services that cost you almost nothing up to a tremendous amount of money and everything in between. And some of them have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I've definitely found, over the years that there isn't always a one-to-one relationship between what you pay and what you get.
Totally.
Yeah. Like you think, oh, this guy is like so much more experienced, so much more expensive. I must be getting, sometimes a smart kid right out of college is going to outperform all of them, and it's just amazing to see. So, I mean, as they say, hire slow, fire fast.
Yes, exactly. Great question. Ellie, you did something that is happening less and less purely from probability. You asked me a question I've never been asked before. So I've been asked 160 questions. I mean, more than that, but in this section of this podcast, I've been asked 160 questions. Nobody's ever asked me that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for answering it.
Look at that. There you go. All right. Let's see. Let's go in the home stretch here. What else do I want to ask you? How about, what else do I want to know about you? What's the thing, Ellie, what's the thing that you're most proud of?
Most proud of? That's an interesting one. I'd say probably in terms of like my own like pride when I'm like looking back on my own life and like things like, yes, is relinquishing perhaps the need for credit or, the need to be the person who solved a problem. I definitely think that, when I was like, 18 or 20, something to prove, it was like super important. But these days I'm really happy if someone else just like becomes the hero and solve the problem and gets all the glory. Like I don't want glory. I want solutions. So
Nice.
it's really made just my personal life, my stress levels, but also my business success that much better to be like, no, you are the most knowledgeable about this particular thing. You should take the lead and everybody should know that you did. I feel like there's a lot of people when they start a company, they kind of feel like the founder needs to be the face of everything, needs to take credit for everything, needs to claim like it was my sole genius that led this company. I made every engineering decision, every hiring decision, every
Yeah.
marketing decision, like even and you'll see certain cases in like Silicon Valley where there's people with 50,000 employees and they're still claiming that they're doing it all themselves.
Yeah. Right.
So,
I can think of some people like that. Yes.
exactly. So
I can think of one in particular.
There is one that stands out a little bit more.
There is one that stands out that somebody name us because we will both be zapped from the earth quickly if we name this person. Somebody will be listening and we will no longer exist as people.
Exactly. So, but I personally, I think that's a bad strategy. I mean, maybe it works for that one individual, but there's probably other variables that are more strongly at play. So I would say that is something that not only has it been like super useful, and I'm super like, glad that has been a development, but I'm actually proud of it because that's the stuff that's most important in our own personal lives.
Yeah. Nice. What's something you're afraid is true about you?
Something I'm afraid is true about me. I mean, so
probably not that you don't floss enough. I bet you floss a lot. You're like, I definitely floss a lot.
I only floss for 10 seconds at a time.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but you do it in a much more technologically advanced and more effective way.
Actually, before I actually get into to answer your question, just because we're on that topic, there was a point in the development of the product where I was actually over flossing because, and this is something you like don't really hear about that much, over flossing.
Your teeth are way too clean, Ellie.
Well, so what happened was when I had the initial prototype, it was just a very early prototype and it didn't look like it does now. And so one of the things I had it hooked up to infinite water and I had like no safety measures in whatsoever. It was early. And I was like, wow, this feels good. And I'm just used to flossing for 2 minutes at a time. And so I would just do it for like 2 to 3 minutes. But do the math. 10 seconds with Instafloss is the equivalent of 2 minutes with regular floss. So that means if it's 2 minutes, that's 120 seconds, which is 24 minutes. If it's 3 minutes, that's 36 minutes. So if I'm flossing like an average of half an hour equivalent multiple times a day for a week, that's over flossing, and you can like start to like really wear at your gums, and your gums get inflamed, sure. and like that could be actually worse. So I'm one of the few cases, and when I realized that was happening, I was like, wow, how bad is it that even the person designing the product doesn't listen to how to use instructions? So it was like a super important wake-up call that I had to build certain safeguards in the product. So right now it will blink for 10 seconds, let you know, and then it will like flash yellow saying slow down, and then it will stop. So you could still floss like, 100 times if you really wanted to, but you'd have to do it on purpose. You can't get lost in the feeling and just being like, I'm not paying attention, I'm just doing it. No, like it's like that was one floss. Then you do it again. That was 2 flosses, like so, you can make it foolproof. You can't make it damn foolproof. Yeah. So at least we could let people know that you have completed a full floss. Don't get lost and hopefully discourage overflossing, because sometimes when you solve a problem of underflossing, you are now at risk of introducing a new problem of overflossing. So we had to balance that both in the design of the product. Anyway, sorry for the digression.
That was good.
The to answer your question, what am I most proud of? Oh, sorry, not most proud of. What am I most fearful?
What are you afraid that's true about you?
What am I fearful that might be true about myself is that all the things I'm doing, maybe it's all motivated by some sort of psychological shortcoming. And as I mature and become a better person, that I just won't feel the need to do this anymore. And so maybe don't go on a path of self-discovery and self-healing, because then you're like, oh, I'm at peace with the world. Like, you become a Zen monk and it's like, we have bills to pay. The bills do not bother me, You're
like, what is a bill? What does that really mean? Does that bill really exist?
And it's like, does it really matter if we succeed in business? So
I like this. This is good. I like this new context of don't do too much work on yourself, because if you do, you may actually get to a state of enlightenment where all the things you used to do, you're like, none of that matters, even when it's good work. That's hilarious.
Because what if all the positive things we do in life are driven by negative feelings? We can't rule that out. It might be the case.
I think it's likely.
It's very likely. And
very likely.
You going to therapy may just ruin your drive and your business success. No, it's also possible the opposite, right? I'm not saying that this is. I'm not making this claim. It could be that your negative feelings are preventing you. I'm not telling you which one's true. I'm just telling you that sometimes I worry about equally plausible hypotheses.
That's great. That's funny. You got me thinking. Man, I'm going to give it a small opinion on this as somebody who spends a lot of time with one-on-one with people, and we don't have this level of the conversation, what you just said, but it is wildly apparent for people, and I'm putting myself right in the bucket of people. A lot of how we operate day to day is all about getting our needs met that either weren't met earlier in our lives, or is driven by ego. And I had a client yesterday. I said, "How you doing?" He goes, "Well, pretty good, other than the ego death." And he got some feedback that he's like, "This crushed my ego." And I'm sure as an inventor, you've had that ego death happen to you many, many times. And it's just, but I don't see it as a bad thing. I just see it as how we're built, which also makes us different from animals. Because animals don't have ego. Like my dog, I don't think has an ego, at least not in the way we would define it. She just wants to do her thing. But like when she makes a decision, she's not making a decision of like, well, is this going to get my need met? And it didn't go so well last time. She's like, no, can you come pet me or walk me? And I think it's what makes us unique as humans.
Cats probably have egos though.
Cats are ass. They have such, and I love cats, but they have egos. They're like, if I'm feeling like giving you love today, I might come sit on your lap and you could pet me, but I don't know. I might make you work for it. Like I want you to want me. Dogs are like, I have no ego. I just want you to want me all of the time.
Yeah. Like, no, I mean, cats. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say cats, like if they're miffed by you insulting their ego, like I know I had someone's like a cat was going up to like eat some of their like food, and they're like stop, and the cat looked at them, picked up its paw, stuck it into like their milk, yeah, and then walked off. It's just like
I kind of appreciate. I mean, I gotta appreciate that a little bit. I like the vibe. All right, Ellie, how can people connect with you, learn more about what you're up to on a personal level, what you're doing with your company, and just any way that. Anything you'd call to action here, anything you'd like the audience to do?
Yeah, go to Instafloss.com, which is like an instant floss or Instagram, but floss, Instafloss.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter. You can see all the stuff we're coming out with and be the first to know when you can floss your teeth in only 10 seconds. Yeah.
When are you expecting production to the market? Like, when are you expecting it to be generally available?
So most likely in June.
That's good.
It's very far soon. From now. No, not at all. I mean, I'm going there and I'm going to be part of the like initial QC testing. So like the only thing that could delay it is, let's say we're like, oh my God, like, I don't know, when it came off the factory, someone had a setting wrong, or they're not doing this part right, or this machine was configured incorrectly. Like we have to run this again. So I can't rule it out. Yeah. But right now it's scheduled for June, most likely June.
You heard it here first. We'll kind of hold you to it. Maybe I'm going to hold you to it because I'm going to be expecting one in June. I'm going to order one to come in June. So, Ellie, I want to thank you for being on. Really fun conversation. We'll have to have you come back on and we need to wax philosophical on this podcast. I feel like you and I could talk for hours about some of the things you brought up, and we just barely dug in. But congratulations on all the success so far. Everybody check it out. It's really cool. It's really cool to see the technology. And I think this will, and I'm a parent of 2 young children. This is a thing that makes a difference because kids hate flossing, hate it. So not to say that, I don't know if you have a pediatric pus, but the idea of like, hey, there's a fun thing that's going to feel good in your mouth and it's just water and you're already used to it versus like, I'm going to drag this string across your gums, 7-year-old. Like, no. It's a really, really cool product. Great example of we all need it. It seems like it's going to make it better. It's more effective. And it looks like, quite frankly, more fun.
Yeah, I mean, felt so good. I did it too much. How often does that happen?
Yeah, it felt so good, did it too much. Like, it sounds amazing. Last thing for us, Ellie, leave us with some words of wisdom. Short and sweet, please.
Short and sweet. I would say really foster your curiosity by never letting an idle wondering go unchecked. Meaning, so if you're just at dinner and you're like, where do forks come from? I feel like 99% of people they just let that thought pass through, just like, oh, I don't know. Boom. Just you have a phone in your pocket, just like whip it out, Google it.
Yeah.
If you're like looking at a cloud and you're like, what type of cloud is that? How do I know if it's raining? Is that like a cirrus cloud? Or what sort of thing is that? Whip out your phone, Google it. You never know where your idle curiosities are going to take you. We live in like the most unique period of time where we have access to all of humans' information in our pockets, and we still wonder things, and we don't even put in the effort to whip out our phones and look it up. I would say just every time you're curious about something, look it up, because sometimes what you're going to find is far more fascinating than you ever would have imagined.
Yeah. I'm going to leave us with this on this point and something specific that you mentioned. I am also a musician. I'm a guitar player as well. I'm going to check out the puddle. That is a need.
Singular sound.
I have an amp actually that will do automatic bass and drum now based on your playing, which is pretty cool. It's probably using technology similar. The place that I'm similar in curiosity, I love to do this for songs. So I'm going to give a plug for a website called Songfacts, and it's amazing. You can go in there, you hear a song, you're like, I wonder where the lyrics came from. I wonder when they wrote this, what the inspiration, and you just type it in. It's just songfacts.com. Not a sponsor. It's just a site I love. And you go in there and it's really interesting because some songs you hear, you're like, oh, this is a really easy pop song. And like, oh, there's like this huge backstory. Then there's other songs by bands like Genesis where you're like, oh, these people are brilliant. And then the song is like, no, it's just about new love. Like, they're like, yeah, we were inspired and one of us went on a date with a girl we liked and we wrote a song. And others are like, you're like this huge story and just really fascinating stuff. But I'm the same way. And I'll give a plug for, you can actually not even write it, search it. You can ask Siri or Google Assistant now. You'd be like, hey, Siri, where did forks come from? And she'll tell you or give you a website at least. But Ellie, really great to have you on. We'll have you come back on soon once you've had the launch, catch up on what's going on there. Appreciate everything. And good luck to you in Mexico over the next 4 months with the production run.
Thank you so much. One last question, though. Yeah. Is that website Songfacts strictly, or is it Songfacts plus song speculation?
Well, okay, let's talk about this for 1 second. It's kind of like a Wikipedia, but to be on there, generally they will quote interviews with the artist. Like it's like, say it's a Grateful Dead song. Let's say, oh, and we're in this interview in Billboard magazine, Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir said blank, 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 blank. It's never just like, well, I listened to the song and I think it's about this. It's always based on something the artist has either said in an interview, which I like. So it like, and they'll quote this, they'll cite it. I don't know if it's crowdsourced or not, but yeah, if you're a musician and you want to know about a song, go to Songfacts, type in the thing, or you can type in an artist. And it's really interesting to hear where a lot of the inspiration for a lot of these things come from.
Or if you just listen to music, if you're one of those people.
Just listen to music. Yeah, like me. Ellie, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.